Welcome back, and you're watching Vaku, the Diaspora Broadcasting Network. I'm Megha Sharma, and the first Diaspora Dialogue is with a world-renowned author, columnist, and now a diplomat, Amish Tripathi. Amish's book series, the Shiva Trilogy and the Ramchandra series, are the fastest-selling book series in the Indian publishing history. Director of the Nehru Centre in London since 2019. Here's a look at this exclusive chat. Amish Tripathi is an author, columnist and diplomat. Amish's book series, the Shiva Trilogy and the Ramchandra series, are the fastest selling book series in Indian publishing history. Amish took over as director of the Nehru Centre in London in October 2019. Forbes India has consistently ranked Amish as the top 100 most influential celebrities in India. Hello and welcome. You're watching yet another episode of NewsX Vaku, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The entire world is one big family. Joining me on the broadcast is a very special guest. He does not need any introduction. He's Amish Tripathi. He's a columnist, an author, and the biggest role that he has donned at this point of time, the fact that he's a director of the Nehru Centre in London, that's a big task at hand. And Amish, first of all, congratulations for your new book that has come out, Dharma, Decoding the Epics for a Meaningful Life. I had the opportunity to actually go through it and loved every bit of it.
Thanks, Megha. Always a pleasure to come here. And thank you so much for the kind words on this book. Dharma has actually been written with my sister, Bhavna Roy. So it's a joint book.
Absolutely. And I have gone through it. Fantastic. It's an eye-opener with regards to your inner self and how you need to maintain an equilibrium between yourself and the entire world. And that's the nature of things. But I'll come back to that in just a while. You know, I want to understand from you your journey, how it began. And at this point of time, you being a diplomat, being the face of India in an international world, in London at this point of time, you represent India. That's a moment of pride. And how do you go ahead and forge your journey ahead from here?
No, you know me. I mean, I'm a deeply proud Indian. I think there's a tremendous heritage that all of us Indians have been blessed with. Sadly, for many decades, for many centuries even, we have been ignoring our heritage. But there is a mood now to revive, much of the greatness of our past and use that as a fuel to build a better future. India should take its rightful place once again in the Committee of Nations. And then I see that when I engage with Westerners and foreigners now, the way they look at India is qualitatively different. I mean, I've engaged with Westerners in three roles. First, as a banker, in the 90s and early noughties. Yes, India was seen differently at that time. We were a relatively very poor country. We weren't that important a market in those days. And then I engaged with Westerners as an author when I became a full-time author from 2011. And one can see that, slowly the mood was changing. They were seeing India as a more powerful, more consequential country. And now even more as a diplomat, especially the way, Mother India has managed the COVID pandemic, which has failed so many countries across the world, including the far richer countries of the West. You will remember so many were saying that, that we will have hundreds of millions of COVID cases in India and millions will die, including Western media from here. The elite Western media was saying millions will be dying on the streets in India, and actually nothing like that has happened. India has kept the COVID pandemic under control even more, unlike sadly many richer countries who have been selfish with their vaccines. India has actually helped many poor countries. Truly an example of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that we will help others. So many countries in Africa, in Asia. I keep retweeting, as a diplomat, I keep retweeting so many messages from prime ministers and presidents and leaders of so many poor countries, acknowledging the Indian government, for the help that we have given with vaccines. It shows our capability and it shows our big heart.
Capability, resolve, and our culture and ideology. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That's the point. That's you hit the nail on its head with the show that you've gone ahead and brought about. This is the essence that we want to bring about in the Indian diaspora, the NRIs, and the kind of experiences they go ahead and share with the world, and making the world more aware and more enlightened about what India is. It is not just about the serpents and the elephants. It is much more, and it is simply because of the fact that at one point of time, the West is something that we looked forward to emulate,
almost looked up to,
and mimicking. But it is high time that the West now starts looking at India, and we are going ahead and recreating that magic with especially the COVID-19 vaccine. You said that already, and you are going ahead and creating the magic with your Shiva trilogy, the Ramchandra series, Legend of Suhail Dev. Oh my God! I mean, it is going to make a huge wave and a roar across the world. It has already done that, and you need to keep up with your series. You talk about your series, and this is how culturally rich the world is going to become, because your books are a massive insight into Indian mythology, Indian religion, and Indian culture.
I think one of the things I try and get across, through my books, and this is a feedback that I get from many Western readers of my books, that Indian culture can Indian culture can balance many apparently contradictory things. That we are told what Western culture tells us is that you can either be traditional or liberal. You can't be both at the same time, right? Ancient Indian culture actually shows us, no, you can be both at the same time. What does traditions mean? That you will respect the path of your ancestors, you will acknowledge your heritage, you will celebrate your roots, right? And liberalism means respecting the rights of women, respecting the rights of LGBTs, and apparently you can't be both. That's what the West tells us. But in the Indian way, I can be deeply traditional and be deeply liberal at the same time, because I'm not questioning traditions if I respect women. Our ancient traditions said that. I'm not breaking traditions by respecting the rights of gays, lesbians, and transgenders. Our ancient traditions said that. So India can provide this wonderful mix. There is a value to traditions. You see in the West, where they've destroyed, over the last few decades, in a mindless thing towards individualism, they've destroyed most of their traditions. So therefore, in the West now, there's an epidemic of loneliness. If you destroy all community, family, you destroy everything. All you're left with is yourself. Do you know many Western governments have a minister of loneliness now? It is actually such a big problem. People are actually dying out of loneliness. COVID, one of the main reasons COVID pandemic has hit them so badly is because they're all alone at home. There's no one to depend on, no relationships with neighbors. There's an epidemic of loneliness in the West. So if you destroy all traditions, that is not good. But if you become so traditional that there's no respect for women's rights, for LGBT rights, that's not good either.
It was great talking to you, Amish. Thanks for bringing us this perspective about India, the Indian diaspora, and how we have such a massive reach across the globe. London, you're doing a fantastic job. Keep at it. We'll keep seeing you on our show in the future as well.
Thanks, Megha.
All right, next up is Rick Mehta, who is a biotech entrepreneur, licensed pharmacist, attorney, law professional, and the former nominee for US Senate, New Jersey. And he is currently contesting as Republican candidate from New Jersey's 7th Congressional District. Rick Mehta is a biotech entrepreneur, licensed pharmacist, attorney, law professor, and the former nominee for the US Senate, New Jersey. Rick is the first Indian American to have won the Republican Senate primary in New Jersey. Rick is currently contesting as the Republican candidate from New Jersey's 7th Congressional District. Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX, Vaku Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the entire world, big family. Joining me on the broadcast is an PIO, a person of Indian origin from the United States, He is a well-established name when it comes to bureaucracy, when it comes to politics in the United States. In fact, Rick Mehta, it's great to have you. You ran the election for the US Senate to represent New Jersey back in 2020. And it's great to once again have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Megha. It's always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, Rick, I want to understand, and the people who are watching you at this point of time want to understand your journey, your roots from India, and how it took you from being a biotech entrepreneur, innovator, you are running businesses, to then going ahead and deciding that you need to make a difference and get straight on into US elections.
Yeah, absolutely. I love my story, Megha. Let me tell you, my story, my family story started 52 years ago when my father immigrated from Mumbai to Scranton, Pennsylvania. He only had $100 in his pocket. He had to borrow some money from his uncles, begging. We didn't grow up with much. And when he came, he flew into JFK Airport, saw the Statue of Liberty, took a bus to Scranton, Pennsylvania. You can imagine a 19-year-old boy seeing 2 feet of snow on the ground in a town in 1969, Scranton, Pennsylvania. But they worked hard. They had to, really live the American dream. We didn't have many options at the time. My father was the eldest of 6 brothers, and he really had to come here to this country to make it. And that's the beauty of America, to be able to live the American dream and make it if you work hard.
I think that story is brilliant. Daunting an affair of somebody like a 19-year-old going ahead all on his own, fighting it out and making a business, making an entrepreneurship out of it, and bringing you up, and you at this point of time at a juncture which is all encompassing, extremely bright. Elections and politics. So I'm sure you have the enterprising quality of your father, and that has taken you where you are at this point of time. So why that particular, push towards politics?
Yes, yeah. So I got to tell you, I have the sort of the entrepreneurial ingenuity from my father, but I think the somewhat extroverted charisma of my mother. Now, let me just finish my story real quick, because I love this other part of it. I always talk about my father, but I want to highlight my mother. My mother also immigrated to this country. And she was in Philadelphia, where my grandparents moved to New Jersey. My parents actually met at Temple University in Philadelphia. Probably one of the first. They were a love marriage, but both their mamas knew each other back in Mumbai, and they blessed the engagement. And let me tell you, they were probably one of the first Americans of Indian origin to get married in the United States. They got married right in Philadelphia on Christmas Day. And so that, I've accomplished a lot. And similarly, I met my wife. I'm a pharmacist, an attorney. I worked at the FDA in varying positions. I ran a health department. But really what drove me the most is to make sure that our political environment, our policies, our landscape is favorable to raise families, to keep the values that we've been raised with from our family, from our parents, from generations past. And I saw that slipping away in New Jersey. So more than being a biotech entrepreneur, more than running businesses, more than being in the health professional, more than being an attorney, more than all of that for me, it was the family values, the policies that help protect our children, to help them nourish and to grow. Now, Megha, my wife and I, similarly, we met at Rutgers University. We have 3 boys, 7, 5, and 3, and they mean the world to me. So everything I do and everything I'm driven to do is to make sure that I leave our state and our country a little bit better for them and for their families and generations forward, just like my parents did.
I think congratulations to you. You're doing a fantastic job, and bright futures for your 3 kids. I'm sure they're going to have and bring about laurels to you and your family and your legacy. But what I am interested in knowing, Rick, at this point of time is that being a politician, going ahead and campaigning on the streets of New Jersey, you must have touched a lot of people's lives, because you're interacting with them, you're wanting to understand their problems, their issues, and go ahead and resolve them. And that's the mark of a true statesman. Or eventually, when you go ahead and pick up those positions, you're working for the people. And when an Indian origin individual goes ahead and speaks to this plethora of diaspora not just the diaspora, but also diversities and ethnicities that are present in the United States and New Jersey. What have you experienced? Has there been no, I wouldn't say a complete change, but a transformative change with regards to how India used to be viewed upon and what India is viewed upon at this point of time by the world and especially in the United States?
Yeah. Well, I think, putting political parties aside, I think both parties recognize the contributions and values that Indian Americans have brought to America. Like even just yesterday, I believe Joe Biden went on record talking about how Indian Americans are taking over the world. Now, he's been known to have racist gaps from time and again, but I think the recognition of the Indian American diaspora and the contributions have been held by presidents alike, President Trump, his relationship with Prime Minister Modi, and soon to be seen what the relationship will be for, Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi as well. But, for me, now I'm very proud of this. I ran for the United States Senate as the first Indian American Republican, the first person of color to win the Republican nominee for a statewide race in New Jersey, where New Jersey has the second largest population of Americans of Indian origin, only second to California. Now, remember, New Jersey is also the fourth smallest state. We have a concentrated number of people in a tiny little state, which makes sense because it was the home for immigrants. 1/3 of us are immigrants or from somewhere. And when I walked the streets and when I went up and down the state, people really resonated with the message, the immigrant story, the one where you have to work hard to live the American dream, the one where I've achieved the American dream and so proud of everything that we've accomplished. And to those results, I earned the highest number of votes out of any Republican statewide candidate for the state of New Jersey, amassing over 1.8 million votes. Now, it wasn't enough to put the goal, push it over. But, I was going up against someone who was a sitting incumbent who ran for president, and we still did incredibly well. And I think the recognition of the contributions of my forefathers, my parents, my mother and my father, building iconic areas like Oak Tree Road and Edison, along with all the small businesses and the contributions to the healthcare system, really culminated through my campaign. And we got a chance to highlight that, and it really resonated, regardless of race, color, creed, or religion. It resonated with all Americans throughout New Jersey.
It's definitely unprecedented. You being a live example of that. I wish you all the best for the 2022 campaign that you're going to go ahead and already perhaps have started preparing for. And we wish to see you in the Congress, in the Senate, and all the very best for that. I thank you once again, Vic, for joining us on the broadcast for this very special episode of Vaku.
Thank you.
All right. So now from a politician from Washington, D.C. to New York City-based fashion designer Naeem Khan. He lives in the heart of the fashion district, New York City. He has launched his career as an apprentice for legendary American designer Halston back when he was 20 years old. And his designs are adorned by the who's who of the fashion, entertainment and Hollywood fraternity. Take a look at this exclusive shot. Naeem Khan is a fashion designer based in the heart of the fashion district in New York City. He launched his career as an apprentice for legendary American designer Halston at the age of 20. Naeem's collections have adorned glamorous women across the world, including Beyoncé, Jennifer Lopez, Taylor Swift, former US First Lady Michelle Obama, and the Duchess of Cambridge, Kate Middleton. Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX. I'm Megha Sharma, and this very special episode of Vaku, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Joining me on the broadcast is Naeem Khan. He's an iconic fashion designer. He does not need any introduction. He's made our country proud because he is perhaps the only Indian fashion designer who is at the top of his game. And every single celebrity worth his salt actually loves to be in his design, pleads and desires and hopes to be in his designs. Welcome on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be part of this. I love India and I'm longing to come there. Thank you.
Yes. Talking about your roots, the 3 generations of the Khans. have lived in Mumbai. They have been closely working when it comes to the textile and the embroidery industry. Talk to us about your native town, your family background, and obviously the natural choice for you to become a fashion designer.
You know, I grew up in a little town in India, very close to Delhi, actually, called Bareilly. And that's where my family comes from. And my grandfather started his business making embroideries in Bareilly in UP. And then my father moved to Mumbai, and I was born in Bareilly, but moved to Mumbai with my dad. And so we are a family for 3 generations that we have created the most incredible handmade embroideries for the elites of India. And I, at the age of 20, left India to go to school to America. So to me, I grew up with the, with the oldest art in India, watching my grandfather, my father. So it's part of my DNA. And that is what I've taken, and I've modernized it for today's woman. And it's my symbol. And to me, what's my story? Designer has to have a story. My story is that I come from a heritage family that made the most beautiful Indian textiles. And I've modernized it for today's woman. And I make for the first lady to the movie stars. So I've taken what is core Indian and I've made it modern.
Absolutely. And congratulations on that, because every single of your ensemble is reflective of the Indianness, and you've kept that intact. And that's obviously the secret sauce to your success, and kudos to you. But keeping in mind, today's fashion industry, the domestic fashion industry, and comparing it to the Western fashion industry, how long till we are able to actually climb that journey and come to the top of our game, the Indian designers? Because while it's all hunky-dory over here, there are only far and few in between, and you would know about it, who have actually, been able to reach the stature that you have.
The thing, Indian fashion designers make the most beautiful, beautiful clothes. I mean, like I've seen during India Fashion Week or Delhi Fashion Week, we have very creative designers. It's just that the world of fashion internationally is a tough world. It's like trying to be a Bollywood star, trying to be a Hollywood star. I mean, it's not so easy, because you have to have infrastructure. You have to understand the market. I think, but we are very, very close that India is going to become the biggest player of fashion because of all what's going on in India. Our schools are fabulous. We have the creativity. We have the manufacturing. We are going to be a big powerhouse. We already are, but it's just that we've not created the symbols or the designers to create the image, which is happening as we speak, because I think India is moving at a rapid pace.
Now, when you started off as an apprentice back when you were 20 years old, and now that you have been in the industry for decades together and has there been a tectonic shift in how Indians are viewed in the Western society, in America and Europe?
Indians are viewed very highly in America. I can speak for the USA. We are the largest growing successful community in America, from either be doctors, lawyers, professionals, tech world. And now, you look at me in fashion. I mean, I think we have a gamut of successful Indians in America. And the viewpoint of Indians is incredible. We are smart, we are family oriented, we are loving, we are hardworking, and we are creative. So we have a very, very good standing in the United States.
Absolutely. And what can be done ahead? Because you go ahead and see perhaps the benchmark for an Indian to have arrived, and in the United States and United Kingdom especially, is a number of those members of parliament. We have go ahead and vice president, the Biden administration is part Indian, having her lineage from a very small back in Tamil Nadu. How can the Indians and the Indian diaspora who is living in America bring about a social and a tectonic change when it comes to what's happening in the Western world vis-a-vis how India is perceived in the Western world? Keeping in mind there are these strains, and I'll tell you about it, because when the pandemic hits and India is being criticized and looked down upon and being called an apocalypse, and there are, various sorts of critiques that are coming about. How does that image of an India with the snake charmers and the cows roaming about on the street gets changed to an India that is tech savvy, that knows what it's doing and talking about, and that is extremely smart when it comes to being an engineer or a doctor, as one is as being a politician or a fashion designer?
So, see, to me, how do we perceive India? To me, I look at India as this amazing country with such diversification, right? So you have either like the most amazing, brilliant scientists to designers to businessmen. Then you have the snake charmers, which is like so incredible. We are a great, great country with this diversification. And I think in America, people have good impressions about India. It's just that we are so big and we are trying, our political world in India I don't have to tell you. I mean, we need strong governments that can change things in India. And we need the support of the government to build fashion in India. Like the schools that are coming up, for example, we need help. And the vision of India for a Western, this is a difficult question because I really, really feel, you're recording this, right? But we're not live. Okay. I just feel that, India is perceived either amazing or they look at India as this poor country. And the problem with looking at us as this poor country, there are reasons for it. We need to also make sure that our image, that we are put in the front through the right way. We don't have any great PR for India. You look at other countries, how they push here is incredible. So we need to have amazing ambassadors. We need to have, we need to grow all that. It's like what China did.
Yeah.
They really PR'd themselves into position. And we need to take whatever we have and we have to have the right vision for it. Either it be the snake charmer or the great tech guy, but it has to have, they're both fascinating to me.
Your words of wisdom for anybody and everybody who is watching this and is struggling or wanting to be a fashion designer and making it big in the international, especially in the Western world, the way you have gone ahead and held your head high and made our entire Indian community so.
Thank you so much. There's a few things. One of them is you have to give your entire being to fashion. Fashion is one of those things where if you don't dream and live by it day and night in your head, it's a creative world. You have to be totally obsessed by it. And hard work is obviously a huge thing in this. Having experiences. Fashion is all about what experiences you've had, opening yourself, museums, Bollywood, Hollywood, understanding art, history, all those things are important because all those relate to our life. Secondly, everyone has to have a story. What is your story? What kind of clothes do you make? How do you stand out from others? But you have to be real. You cannot make just clothes that just look fabulous, but they are of no function. It has to be functional. It has to be retailable. So you have to have a story, you have to work hard, and you have to give your life to this business because it's one of those things where you have to.
All right, those are three big points of advice. I think every single designer, every single person who aspires to be a designer should just note it down, memorize it in their heads, because that's coming in from the style guru, from the fashion guru, if I may call him. Thank you, Naim, for joining me on this broadcast on Vasudev Kutumbakam Vaku. It's great to have you on my show.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
All the very best.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Next up aligned is Vivek Lal's interview. He is a world-renowned scientist and chief executive of General Atomics Global Corporation. Before joining General Atomics, Vivek has worked in the past at Lockheed Martin and held key positions with Boeing and Reliance as well. Vivek Lal is a world-renowned scientist and chief executive at General Atomics Global Corporation. Before joining General Atomics, Vivek worked at Lockheed Martin and held various positions with Boeing and Reliance. Vivek was affiliated with the United Nations in New York to advise on broadband and cybersecurity issues for challenges within the global community. Well, hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX Vaku. My name is Megha Sharma, and joining me on the broadcast is a very special guest, Vivek Lal. He's the Chief Executive of General Atomics Global Corporation, which is a leading aerospace, defense, and tech company based out of United States. Vivek has been in the United States for a very long time, making India proud and Indians proud across the entire world, because not only has he been in the defense sector and currently heading General Atomics Global Corporation, he's also been part of the Lockheed Martin Corporation, Boeing. Back in India, you were also dealing with Reliance. It's exciting sphere of things that you have found yourself in. You've built a career for yourself, and it's a dynamic, strategic arena to be in. If you could share some more light into what all it entails, how difficult and challenging can things be, and at the same time, how much you enjoy the entire process of being in this sector.
Thank you, Megha. It's a pleasure and honor to be with you and our viewers. Yes, so I've had a passion for airplanes from a very young age, and therefore aerospace and defense has been close to my heart all my life, having lived in different parts of the world growing up, whether it's Europe or the US or Africa or Asia. I've had the rare opportunity to see what are some of the motivators and challenges in different parts of the world when it comes to technology and research and development and so forth. And I find that in the sector that I'm in, which is heavily dependent on R&D and innovation, there are some common aspirations and passions of people around the world to help contribute and further the science. Mm-hmm. And so in that regard, it's very humbling that I was part of this journey that saw a lot of growth over the last 30 years. And I think some of the challenge, of course, remains that as we expand into this area, one needs greater and greater innovation and collaboration, not just collaboration within the country, but collaboration across the world.
Absolutely. And very recently you were in India, and it's an annual sojourn that you make because of the kind of ties India and United States shares when it comes to the defense and strategic sector as well. Has there been a dramatic transformational change that you've witnessed in terms of what India was as a defense power maybe 10 years ago, a decade ago, or 2 decades ago, and what it is as it has gone ahead and positioned itself now?
Absolutely, Megha. I think the US-India defense relationship has emerged very significantly in the last decade or two. And I think compared to where things are to where things were, I think one of the biggest shifts has been the confluence of the congruence of two nations with common objectives, common goals, and shared democratic principles and values. And so in that regard, whether it's the military to military ties or the defense trade or the willingness to look at co-development and co-production, all those areas have seen a remarkable increase over the last many years. And it's very encouraging. And I think it's just the beginning of a very strong relationship in many of these areas.
Talk to us about your personal journey. You've been raised in Indonesia, you were in Asia, you yourself said that you've traveled various parts of the world, including living in Europe. At this point of time, you're in the United States. Has there been a perceptual shift in the way the Indian community is looked upon by all these foreign nationals, for that matter, natives of those particular regions that you've lived in? What more can be done at this point of time to bring about that sort of an image change that perhaps India has already gone ahead and brought about in ways and means that are now very, very visible in terms of how the world perceives India at this time?
Absolutely, Megha. I think there has been a very significant change as I reflect back over the 30 years and different geographic locations that you mentioned. The respect for India, the respect for Indians, and what the contributions of the Indian diaspora have been around the world, and the strong people to people ties with India and the various nations. They've just gone through a dramatic positive shift. And I think as a result, if you look at any of the economies, including the US, a lot of the engine for in many sectors is driven by Indian Americans, as an example. And so you look at the levels that people have reached in the different corporate arenas, or as well as the governments itself, one will find great improvement and great respect for what India and Indians have done around the world.
And people like you who have made quite the change. You are the influencers when it comes to the Indian diaspora. You are the voice of the Indian community. And when you talk about the defense and strategic sector, your name crops up every single time. And you being such a significant voice, is there a way to amplify the story of the enterprising Indians and the culture and the ethos of India to the world? If there could be a platform that could be created, or is it already being done by the likes of you?
I think there are 6 buckets of stakeholders that continually affect change, affect policies, affect progress. And I think as Indian Americans and as being part of the Indian diaspora, these stakeholders are important to keep in mind as we move forward. To name a few, one is the industry captains. The industry captains on both sides, whether US and India, have a significant role in furthering ties. The other set of stakeholders would be the bureaucracy on both sides, and understanding the 2 different systems and how to continue to find convergence so that there's value created for both systems. Then, of course, is the political spectrum on both sides, and shared democratic values and principles, and continuing to make sure that converges in the future. I think media and the great work that you're doing in terms of enhancing the visibility and the commonality between the 2 nations, and trying to make progress, that has a very significant role at large. And then, of course, I do feel that no matter which field, whether it is IT or defense or finance or healthcare, I think the Indian diaspora has come to the forefront, and so anything that can be done to encourage and highlight the good work that's been going on will certainly help in this process.
And while there may have been several of these fora, these clubs, these platforms that may have been created to build about the community and the stronghold that it has at this point of time in various continents, America, especially when you talk about, because you've been living there forever. And at this point of time, there are only just a handful of individuals. You will talk about a Sundar Pichai, or you talk about a Sunil Mittal that people have heard of, and they are recognized. And beyond a point, you just, you don't have a choice, or you are just trying to struggle to figure out names of the Indian Americans or the Indian Europeans or those who are living in Africa or Asia or Australia who've done fantastic work. So is there already something that is being built at this point to recognize these people who are doing fantastic work, but at the same time are not as recognized as their counterparts in, say, a Pichai or a Mittal? And if there could be a push that could be taken in that direction to bring about this entire experience, to amplify their voices, to celebrate and recognize their feats, and bring them on a global arena.
Absolutely. I think it's very important to get those unsung heroes identified and showcased, if you will, that have not only bettered the economy of whichever country they're living in, or bettered the living conditions for people in the community, but also, on a bilateral basis or a multilateral basis. And so to give those folks a voice and be an inspiration for the next generations to come to see all the work that has been done, I think there is a certain vacuum, if you will, and I do feel that needs to be filled. I think there are various chambers of commerce and associations that try and highlight that in the different countries. But still, I think the road is long ahead, and there's a lot that can be done in that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vivek, for joining me on this very special broadcast. We'll continue to have you on our special shows in the future as well. Well, for that moment, this is Megha signing off from Vaku, NewsX Vaku. Continue to watch this show. All right, next up is Babu Ahluwalia, who's a New York-based fashion designer. She, along with her husband Sachin, founded a fashion design house called Sachin and Bobby back in 2009, and that's their story right up. Babu Ahluwalia is a New York-based fashion designer. She, along with her husband Sachin, founded a fashion design house, Sachin and Bobby, back in 2009. This contemporary women's wear line specializes in refined evening gowns and separates. Well, hello and welcome to yet another episode of NewsX Vaku. I'm Megha Sharma. Joining me on the broadcast is a celebrated fashion designer, Babu Ahluwalia. Now, she is from the eponymous fashion design brand Sachin and Bobby, a fashion design house that is based in New York City. It started off back in 2009, Bobby, and of course, you were at that point of time known for your embroideries, and you still are, but you have further grown manifold in terms of what you create and the beautiful styles that you go ahead and portray for celebrities across the world. Of course, the brand Sachin and Bobby is named after you and your husband. You guys, in fact, if I'm correct, met back when you were students and you were in the design school, and that's how you met and decided to now come up with this entire story that is your livelihood, and it also goes ahead and portrays and gives you an identity of who you are personally and professionally as well. It's great to have you, Bobby, on the show.
Oh, well, thank you. Glad to be here. So, like you said, you've done your research. Yes, I'm a girl from New Delhi who arrived in the fall of '94 at FIT, met a boy from Bombay, Sachin, in the fall of '94, where I studied textile and he studied fashion. And we really were in our early 20s, and we had this, beautiful friendship, this sweet romance. That few years later, as soon as we graduated, we kind of course, took a loan from our parents, because we had, every young kid wants to live this American dream, whether it is working for a company, whether it's starting a small business, whether it's trying to make it in America, because that it really is, it's a beautiful dream to kind of at least think of. So we were really serious, ambitious kids when in our 20s. And we started, like a small design service business. Luckily, Sachin had inherited a fantastic set of workshops and a fantastic atelier from his mom. So we started our journey with no really big plans, but with a lot of gusto and a lot of grit, saying, when you're young, you really have no fear. You don't have that kind of bills to pay. So you're much more kind of, bashful, and kind of naivety helps you build those dreams. So you make a checklist of who you want to work with and pound the pavement, make phone calls, call friends, see who knows whom, and just present yourself, So we were very lucky in the 6-8 months of our business, which was really a design service business at that point. It was a more B2B kind of a business, where we wanted to work with, the top 5 designers at that time. In the 90s, it was the house of Donna Karan, it was Oscar de la Renta, it was, say, Calvin Klein. So it was, these kind of houses were on the rise. I'm going back 27 years now. And we were very lucky to meet Mr. de la Renta in the first 6 to 8 months of our game.
Okay.
And I don't know what he saw in us. I mean, he saw a suitcase full of beautiful swatches and ideas that were like, kind of novel. And he was like, really? You have a family business? This is something new. Are you brother, sister? What, are you married? Like, it was all kind of very sweet and silly, wonderful at that point. So we started working with him, and we worked with him till he passed. But so that was a big division of our company, where we would work with designers like him. We luckily, through, in the business, the fashion business does seem large, but people do move about. So when his chief designer moved on to the house of Tom Ford or the house of, Valentino, we were connected to people there. So it organically grew from the fall. Our inception was really January of 97. We started work, and we kind of built our strength year after year. Met Milano Blahnik, who was just at that point, they had a partnership with George Malkamas, who had an in with Sarah Jessica Parker, who was the key gal of Sex and the City. So we started doing beautiful bejeweled shoes. So it was really, yes, luck by chance, but it was a lot of good work that we presented, and something that was very well priced. So we started, like Vogue really called us when we met the editors many years later, saying we were the best kept secrets in the design industry, because we had the savvy taste level of the West, but we had the authentic, beautiful work knowledge of the East. So it was a very unique place for us, and we, built our strength year by year. And as glamorous as it was a lot of hard work, because Sachin was in India about 8 times a year. And that's a lot of back and forth. That's a lot of training of the hands in Mumbai. And then when we started working with the European teams, they would take the initiative of flying their, like the House of Ascada or the House of Actress. They would fly their teams into Mumbai and actually station them in Mumbai and have them train our technicians. So, over the years, we've learned, we've built the strength of our facilities in Bombay. And of course, when you are in it for the 10-year run, it was 10 years ago that I said, as much as I admire these homes, as much as I love this fashion, I still can't afford it. And that my lifestyle is simpler, I would like to, have a point of view and have an eponymous line of our own with a better price structure that can actually be worn, be celebrated, be enjoyed, but not really so. I mean, I'd like to, weave a dream, but I'd like to still make my clothes and my accessories a little more accessible.
Okay.
So I guess that was the why as to why we started our own point of view besides the B2B.
Okay, all right. And then Sachin and Bobby, how did that come into picture? Was it because of the fact that you were at this point of time dabbling with all these major designers, you're collaborating with them, you're getting all the success of the world, but then going ahead, like you already said, you wanted your brand to be much more accessible to the larger number of population that you were catering to, and therefore a breakout. But that was a daring, difficult, courageous decision.
And you don't realize till you actually do it, like because when you're so closely knit with a bigger house, you don't realize the pain points an own independent label can have, because yes, people know you in the industry, but in the outside, in the real world, people are like, who? So you have to really start from scratch all over again. But we are kind of risk takers and true entrepreneurs, so there is no guts, no glory. You've got to kind of find its way. There's no instant success. You learn through the expensive ways. I mean, you realize what a money pit your own brand could be, and that's where you are, but you've built a name, you've built a pretty sizable following, a pretty genuine following where people actually enjoy the clothes. And it's been 10 years, but I feel like I'm starting all over again, because the pandemic did kind of pause the businesses, all of our businesses, for a period of time. So it's kind of a refresh mode, and listen, it's so many years of experience. So you kind of, are well-trained hands, and the joy of dressing really should be day into evening. The joy of dressing should be really the aha of what you enjoy at work, what do you enjoy at play. So that was the why as to why we started our own brand.
talking about working with all these international designers, living in America, living the American dream, have there been, I'm sure there were changes that you had to adapt yourself to, but right now, because since you've lived there for years and years together, that's your first home, I suppose, not even the second one. How has the perception of an Indian origin person living in America changed over the past years that you have lived in New York?
I'm very fortunate that, see, living in New York, at least I was never very aware of the color of my skin because, I'm married to a chap who's brown too, you see. So luckily, when we met Mr. De La Renta, he's Latin too. And in his studio, he had French people, he had Brazilian kids, he had Francisco Costa, who comes from Brazilian, he had Spanish designers. So was it a challenge? I wouldn't say so. The perception of India was a challenge to me because I'm pretty, we mingle with our friends, with our American friends. We go to Christmas parties. I have a little Diwali holiday, so I call people over, whether it doesn't matter what denomination you are. So because we kind of integrated pretty well from the onset, like, we celebrated Thanksgiving, we would do a tandoori turkey at home instead of a regular turkey. I was invited, I still am invited to people's Christmas parties, so I invite people to my Diwali parties. So, you've got to be reciprocal and weave into a society if you want to make this your home. But the perception of India has to get changed, not just you. So it's that piece that took a while, whether it was the narrative of your own story, whether being very open about your own life journey, whether taking friends along to India when you would, whether you would have work friends come and travel in your factories and live through the experience of living there, that takes time. And that has to be lived.
As an Indian designer, so that person's an Indian designer, so all that they can go about and provide you or come put it on a platter is maybe a lehenga or a sari and embroidery. So is that sort of a stereotype that had to be broken into and then gone ahead and built about your own?
It was not that deliberate because I lived an American life, you see. So for me, my ode to India is always color. My ode to India is always some beautiful textural design. But in terms of just doing, lehengas and saris are brilliant and are wonderful, but that's not my life here. Yeah. I live an American life. When I go back to India, I will wear a salwar kameez when I go to Gurdwara. That's it. Like I don't think I'll wear a salwar kameez for any other functions because I'm not used to it. I would rather wear a really chic tunic that could be from an Indian designer with a pair of pants or with a pair of shorts. So it's how we think today. It's how we live our lives today. So that's how we have to be very authentic to our own voice and present to the world what makes sense to your life. And you have to listen to the consumer. It's not a dream, but where is she going in it? And how many times is she going to wear it? So if you make it relevant and you make it kind of very palatable, I think you will find a following. But you've got to not live in your own bubble. You have to keep your ears to the ground. You have to humble yourself in terms to where is the need. If people are getting sick of fast fashion because of the sustainability factor and they want a point of view that's a little bit more authentic and want to pay the money for it, then it's going to take time, but you will build your point of view out. It's just, there is no easy win, but you've got to kind of,
strong point to be there. And of course, absolutely. And before I let you go, Bobby, the Indian designers in the international world are doing tremendous work over there. And while that has been witnessed in just bits and pieces, there's more that can be done in this entire industry. How can the Indianness, when you talk about the Indian community, when you talk about the story of India, be better portrayed, especially with such a creative medium as fashion design?
A good question. I have to think on that. I would imagine like people like us, people like Bibu, we're trying to do the best we can to be the best representatives out there, within in our own platform into how to do better. Happy to be part of workshops and happy to be part of conversations that kind of educate people on what today's India is, because today's India is, very different from the perception of people of what it is. Still, somebody hasn't lived their life, hasn't traveled, hasn't had exchanges with India. It's always the perception of, like, to me, till I didn't go to Turkey, I didn't realize, oh my God, it's so modern. It's amazing. So it's,
And Indians at that point of time, the perception that the international media had was of snake charmers and elephants. But that's something which is completely away from the reality of India.
Yeah, and embroidery work was only very binary, and it's only these many stitches. There are so many stitches and so many weaves. So it is, a little laborious in terms of educating people. But if there is true interest, then, you be part of conversations and, talk it up and drum it up and excite people, because that's what you're here to do, excite and delight, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Bobby. It has been such a pleasure talking to you. I wish you all the best for all your future endeavors.
Oh, you're very kind.
And
Good luck.
Actually meet you in person and hold more of these discussions, especially when it comes to a creative field as fashion design. And there's so much that Indians can do abroad to bring about that sort of a story that weaves India and puts it in the perspective of individuals abroad, because they've started to slowly understand what India is, what Indianness is, what the ethos and culture is. But fashion designers and this industry can only bring a bigger platform to allow for that sort of a culture absorption and saturation that needs to happen at this
I agree. Well, thank you for having me. Stay well.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'm glad that you went ahead and enjoyed our launch episode of Vaku, the Diaspora Broadcasting Network. We'll continue to bring in the good work, more interviews of the persons of Indian origin living overseas from India, obviously going ahead and doing fantastic work in various arenas, be it from politics, bureaucracy, liberal arts, fashion design, Hollywood, you name it, and we'll get it for you on this broadcast. On that note, I will slip into a short break. Stay tuned on NewsX, because the next episodes are going to take place bi-weekly on Wednesdays and on Saturdays, 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, only for the viewers of NewsX in India and those who are viewing us abroad as well. And finally, before I let you go, I will go ahead and yet again make a mention of signing up on Memboro/Vaku. Get the subscribership at 100 rupees per month for Vaku and help us in our initiative to make the Vaku community bigger, grander, and a more enriching experience. On that note, thank you for watching NewsX Vaku.
NewsX ITV network have proudly launched the Vaku Diaspora Broadcasting Network.
Vaku DBN will be India's first mainstream platform dedicated to the diaspora community. Help support us. Become Vaku patrons at memboro.com/Vaku. You will get the first access to our interviews, make recommendations, merchandise access, ask questions, and get a shout out of thanks on our TV shows.
You can also suggest to us who should get the Vaku Golden Chakra Awards, and also tell us who should get into the Vaku Hall of Fame. Limited memberships are available at 100 rupees per month on Memboro Vaku.
Sign up now. Log on to memboro.com/Vaku.